Hi, everyone. Welcome to D2R's Black History Month webinar in honor of Black history. The webinar is called Opportunities and Challenges of Black People in RNA Research. My name is Mariloue Daudier. I'm the Senior Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisor at the D2R Initiative at McGill University. I'm very happy to be facilitating the event today. I will be accompanied by our special guest professors, Loydie, Jerome-Majewska, Momar, Ndao, and Wankah. As we're starting, I would like to introduce this webinar by sharing a few inclusive considerations, a land acknowledgement, information on logistics, the agenda for this session, and information about D2R. So as we're having an EDI event, it is important to set the tone to share a few inclusive considerations. I would like to share that I use the pronouns she and her, sharing the pronoun that we use in LinkedIn titles and email signatures, or as we speak in public events like today, are always to normalize gender diversity and the fact that our physical appearance does not necessarily determine the gender that we refer to. And also, I would like to share that I appear on the screen having curly hair. I'm a Black woman. I'm wearing a floral jacket. And to share how we look like visually on the screen, offer a more inclusive experience for people who live with visual impairment. I would also like to take a moment to share that the D2R initiative at McGill University is on land which has long served as site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. We acknowledge and thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose presence mark this territory on which peoples of the world now gather. It is so important for me to share this territorial acknowledgement in the context of the event today, because of course, Black people and Indigenous people have distinct realities, but we share a common history, mostly in the context of the Canadian history. We share a history of racism, and we also share a history of enslavement, which we will address in a few slides. Now, just a quick note on logistics. At the end of the webinar, we'll have a Q&A. So please use the Q&A function to either ask your question directly in a Q&A function, or you may also request to unmute yourself to ask a question out loud, but at the end of the webinar after our presentations. So here's the full agenda for the session today. I will end the introduction by sharing a bit of information about what D2R is. Then I will walk you through Black history and links with RNA research. Then we will have our three special guests that will share information on three different topics. So Wankah will share with us the importance of the participation of Black people in research and issues of mistrust between Black communities and technology in the health field. Then Momar, Ndao will walk us through the importance of empowering Black communities to play a role in the development of RNA therapeutics and issues of mistrust between Black communities abroad and vaccines. Then Loydie, Jerome-Majewska will talk to us about the importance of Black people in pediatrics, opportunities and challenges of the representation of Black scientists as well. So we will end that by the Q&A. So what is D2R? For those of you who don't know what D2R is, it's a 7-year research initiative at McGill University that has the goal to develop an inclusive Canadian approach to genomic-based RNA therapeutics. It has received $165 million from the prestigious Canada First Research Excellence Fund, which is one of the largest, if not the biggest, funding that McGill University received from the Government of Canada in terms of research. So the vision of D2R is to deliver genomic-based RNA therapies to benefit the health of different populations affected by infectious, rare, and neglected diseases, or those who have common chronic diseases such as cancer. So a really important vision that is helped with the following mission. So to develop an internationally leading initiative in the discovery and development of genomic-guided RNA-based precision medicines, associated computational tools, alongside with a clinical accelerator to ensure application of its discoveries for all Canadians and for the world. So to help us accomplish this vision and mission, we have different partners. So we have researchers from McGill and partner institutions, but private sector companies, academic institutions, public sector funding agencies, and knowledge mobilization organizations. We also have indigenous organizations and major philanthropic donors that we collaborate with. And now that you know more information about the very large landscape of D2R, of the D2R initiative, you probably understand that if we want to be successful in our ambition to be an inclusive Canadian approach to genomic-based RNA therapeutics, we have to do meaningful EDI actions for equity-deserving groups, including Black people. So for this section of the presentation, I will walk you through what Black history is in the context of Canada and links with RNA research. So the cohabitation with Black people in Canada actually started 400 years ago with a not so much glorious story. Our Canadian history courses in elementary and secondary school have focused on the Underground Railroad freeing slaves and led us to focus only on the slavery history of the United States of America. It is only during my Bachelor's of Social Work at McGill University 10 years ago that I have truly learned about the history of Indigenous and Black people in Canada. Did you know that 2/3 of slaves in Canada were Indigenous and 1/3 Black people? I did not know before way too late in my life, I think. From the 17th to the 19th century, between 12 and 15 million of children, women, and men were sold, and over 2 million lost their lives. Forced to work on the fields and doing domestic tasks, Indigenous and Black people have played an important role in Canada's prosperity while enduring harsh treatments such as physical, psychological, and sexual violence. Even though that was 400 years ago, the ripple effects of this atrocious time of our history is not completely solved. Black people are still facing many equity and inclusion issues such as barriers to equitable representation in research and job opportunities, bias and discrimination in the workplace, and a lack of research and policies that address Black people's challenges. From 2015 to 2025, the United Nations has declared that it was the decade of people of African descent. Canada did not embark from the beginning, but did recognize this decade in 2018. This recognition did actually not get much media attention. In fact, I personally knew about this only after the murder of George Floyd. As you are aware, in 2020, the murder of George Floyd sparked conversations on anti-Black racism across the world, including at McGill University, that actually took the lead to develop an ambitious institutional anti-Black racism action plan from 2020 to 2025. In the midst of all the celebrations for Black History Month on campus right now, I've learned last week that McGill University is planning to extend its first action plan to address anti-Black racism to 2027. So we are very committed to addressing anti-Black racism at D2R, just like all over McGill. In 2021, McGill's professor of law, Adel Blackett, played a leading role to write the Scarborough Charter, a document inviting post-secondary institutions to commit to actions to address anti-Black racism, a document that was signed by over 50 universities across Canada. And in our Quebec context, unfortunately, only Anglophone universities have signed this charter. The work of the Scarborough Charter inspired the creation of the Advisory Committee to address anti-Black racism in research and research training that worked on developing a report for the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, also known as SSHRC. So SSHRC, it's important to know that SSHRC is also the host of TIPS, what we call the Tri-Agency Institutional Program Secretariat. So there's some SSHRC initiatives that go way beyond social sciences. So it's the host of the tri-agency that includes SSHRC, NSERC, and CIHR. So it's important to know that this vision of anti-Black racism is a vision that SSHRC wanted to have way beyond the social sciences. So one of the co-chairs of the committee to address anti-Black racism in research and research training was actually one of the co-chairs, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat my sentence. So one of the co-chairs in this committee was McGill's professor of history and classical studies, Ndao. In the beginning of 2023, I got hired at SSHRC as a senior EDI policy advisor. When I got hired, the report was published at the beginning of the year. And after, from July 2023 to December 2023, I was mandated to become a senior EDI and anti-Black racism advisor to lead the development of an action plan to address anti-Black racism for researchers across the Canadian ecosystem. The same year, I had worked on co-developing with colleagues EDI requirements for the Canada First Research Excellence Fund. So the CFREF initiative that I spoke to you earlier about that gave $165 million to D2R. So now I'm on the other side working on the ground, and it's really an honor to me, and including all the EDI initiatives that we have going on, we have committed to the requirements of the CFREF initiative that wants us to work on the equity and inclusion of Black, Caribbean, and African individuals, which is something that is so important to me. So the action plan came out in May 2024 on the website of the Government of Canada with 4 objectives. So the first objective was around fair access. So here we want to identify ways to increase application and award rates of Black researchers. This includes a comprehensive program review to remove discriminatory barriers rooted in anti-Black racism. The objective 2 is around equitable participation. So here we want to identify ways to advance the full participation of Black researchers. For the objective 3, it's about intersectional approaches to research and research assessment. So here we want to articulate intersectional approaches to research design and practices that substantively integrate considerations of anti-Black racism and its impacts. The 4th objective is one that is so important to me, the priority research one. So here we want to find ways to support the interdisciplinary field of Black studies, which has been historically underfunded, and studies that inform public policy goals related to the elimination of anti-Black racism. If you don't know what Black studies are, if it's the first time you come across that term, so it is an interdisciplinary academic field that include but is not limited to the history, culture, politics, challenges of people of African descent. Why this objective is so important to me is because by always putting Black people in the big category of racialized individuals in any EDI action plan, we lose track of the actual representation and issues that are faced by the Black communities. And by really taking the time to address some of these issues through research, I think it's really a game changer to make life better for Black communities all across. And at D2R, the actions for Black, Caribbean, and African individuals that we're committing to are, for example, awareness activities like the webinar today, keeping track of Black researchers who apply and who get funded and assess the barriers. We are going to also be developing specific internship and mentorship programs to enable attraction, recruitment, retention, and flourishing of Black talents in RNA research. And we also want to encourage the promotion of Black studies in RNA research by supporting research and innovation specific to issues of Black communities, such as mistrust between Black communities and health technology, vaccines, and medication, lack of representation of Black people in genomic trials and in dataset analysis, lack of empowerment of Black researchers in endemic countries, and inequitable delivery of therapeutics to Black communities. So to talk more about all of these things, I will leave the floor to our special guest, starting with Professor Paul Wankah, who is Vice Chair of D2R's Partner and Community Engagement Committee, and also Assistant Professor at the Faculty of Medicine and Oral Health at McGill. In Creole, to say thank you very much, we say merci en pile. So I will say merci en pile, and over to you, Paul.
So thank you, Mariloue. So I would like to share my screen now. So, hi everyone, and in this Black History Month, I am happy to review recent literature and contributions on the engagement and also the participation of Black populations in genomic research in general and also RNA research in particular. So in this presentation, I would highlight the current state of evidence on the participation of Black populations in this area, main barriers to the participation of the Black population, and also what are the main implications of the underrepresentation of Black populations in RNA research. So, I mean, like a lot of advances have actually helped contributed to improving the lives of populations. And in this same trend, we have genomic and RNA therapeutic research revolutionizing medicine and healthcare. And there's so many different kinds of genomic related products. And when you're thinking about the broad field of genomics, you think of DNAs, RNAs, proteomics, and so on. And these technological advances have hold the potential to provide innovative solutions to like rare diseases like cystic fibrosis that's found very difficult to address. Also, other rare diseases like spinal muscular atrophy have actually been addressed by innovative RNA-based therapeutics. And not only rare diseases, but thinking of some forms of cancer are much better addressed with less side effects with RNA therapeutics. And also recently, we noticed with the COVID-19 pandemic, we had innovative vaccines that were developed really fast, effective in terms of COVID-19. But then we also recognize that there are also different kinds of vaccines that are developed RNA-based that are not only related to COVID. Then we have advances in much more common diseases like hypertension and diabetes. And while we are actually happy for all of these advances, it is important to inquire if these innovations are accessible and available to everyone and not just those who are actually able to afford them or those who are really like within the context of accessibility to these innovations. So the current state of evidence now in terms of like the participation of different racial groups, so like in the diversity of genomic research in general, as we can see on this in this study, Fatumo and collaborators, they kind of like try to map out like different racial groups and over the years, how much participation. As we can see from 2010 to 2020, there has been like a drastic increase in the participation of Caucasians, that's people of European descent. Meanwhile, like all the other racial groups, including the Africans, like the East Asians, South Asians, Africans, Hispanic, Latino, really accounts for, I think, less than 10%. So here we see that the Black populations from this particular study, they account for 1.1%. And the reasons these authors, they argue that the dominance of European and American genomic research is really related to advances in genomic technologies within these countries. Also, they have more infrastructure and also better funding opportunities in these regions. And this might be why their populations actually much more represented in genomic research in general. So the next study focuses on racial and ethnic disparities among participants in precision oncology clinical studies. So precision oncology leverages genomic research like RNA, DNA molecules in order to improve care for people living with cancer. And so in evaluating racial and ethnic representation, here in this study for breast, prostate, lung, and colorectal cancer studies. And most of these, in this synthesis of the literature, the authors actually looked across 93 studies with about 58,067 enrollees from across racial and ethnic groups. And you realize that 82.3% were whites, non-Hispanic whites, and only 10% were blacks, and about 4.1% were Asians. So this study actually confirms the fact that there's really overrepresentation of Caucasians as compared to other ethnic groups in the precision oncology research. And this last study actually would falling back to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we remember that one of the most prominent RNA-based therapeutics was the COVID vaccines, the RNA-based therapeutic vaccines that were developed for COVID. And this study actually looked across the different trials to try to determine the representation of different ethnic groups. As we can see, they looked at blacks, Asians, mixed, and other ethnic groups, and we realized that about 5.7% of those were black participants as compared to the other ethnic groups. So we have converging evidence that there is underrepresentation of Black people in genomic research and also in therapeutics. And now we need to shift gears to understand why do we have this underrepresentation? And there have been several other studies that have tried to examine the health-seeking behaviors in genomic research for Black people. And my findings will actually represent two systematic reviews. There's one of that's examined 38 primary studies and the other 27 primary studies, and they try to examine what are those social, cultural, and environmental factors that affect the reasons why Black people do not want to participate in the genomic research or in therapeutics. So what comes out from these reviews actually shows that there is a lot of researchers' mistrusts and historical abuse in the healthcare research. So Black people have the tendency much more likely to mistrust healthcare practitioners, mistrust the healthcare system. And this mistrust is usually related to historical abuse in Black communities, the case of the Tuskegee syphilis studies with the Black airmen in the United States actually came out a lot. And also mistrust in governments and pharmaceutical companies actually was a recurring theme across this. Then there's also a psychosocial and cultural factors whereby having past negative experiences in the healthcare system actually makes people to feel less motivated to participate in research. Then there are also broader cultural aspects beliefs and also beliefs related to the benefits or also the uncertainty of research for our particular communities. And then in some other studies, people were actually afraid that in participating in certain research, they can be stigmatized, and also they will be diagnosed with certain pathologies that they are not really ready or prepared to handle. So what are the implications? I mean, it's extremely important that we need to know that by not participating in genomic research, potential benefits of this treatment will not be tailored to the specificities of Black communities. So we would have the treatments are going to be developed for other communities, and we would have issues like mixed diagnosis, mixed treatment rates, and also health conditions that affect African people or Black people will not be researched on. Less attention is going to be paid to these conditions. And if we do not have great representation within this genomic research, we will lose a lot of benefits related to the development of these new therapeutics. So in conclusion, these Black populations actually remain underrepresented in genomic and RNA research, and it is really important to develop community-driven research efforts that's to enhance the participation of Black populations. And also, we need more studies to understand and develop strategies to close this diversity gap. So thank you, and I think Momar will go next.
Okay, make sure I can share it. Yeah, thank you, Melody. Thank you, Paul, for this, Mariloue, and Paul for this excellent presentation. I think, Paul, you already covered most of the stuff that I'm just going to pass through. I have to tell that, anyway, I'm African that living here, but who born in Africa in a village. And during my childhood, I received all the vaccine I need to be protected. What changed since then? But there is some idea and something happened. That's why. I'm just going to show you this map of Africa. Maybe most of you guys participating already know the map. But if you see it, I don't know if I can even attention. Like, I'm just trying to use the. But you can see here, you have the Western, but there is a case I'm going to talk about the Eastern, just in a case of Kenya and Malawi. But I'm from Senegal, really at the coast, completely right at the West. This is how Africa is divided. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Central, Eastern, Northern, Southern, and Western. What's going on with the cursor? Sorry, I have some issue. Oh no, my computer is frozen. Okay, sorry about that. I'm going to do a stop sharing quickly. Okay, share again. Okay, sorry about that. Here you go. Okay, so just a very sad story that this lady, this happened in Kenya. And this story lasts for almost 9 years. They just solved it 2 years ago or 3. 4 women, Kenyan, HIV positive. Anyway, they win the court, they get the stuff, but what they got is only $20,000 compared to what? Because they was not able to have any more babies. Something happened with my screen. Okay, I'm going to do it that way. Okay, just an example. I'm just going to use the name of Panda. This is what they use. You can read the article, the full article. One of them, that all happened for them, HIV positive. She was pregnant. And I think also, Paul, you mentioned it, fear of health issue. People, no one want to be diagnosed for any nasty disease, but in this case, it's for disease who are diagnosed for HIV positive and all pregnant. After they give birth, they was advised to use formula milk exclusively. And they assured them that they enter to receive free food for them and for their baby, but only if they provide proof that they were using family planning. As you know, feeding babies formula is so expensive in Africa. I'm just going to say, one, they did not understand that the family planning they was offered it meant will never be able to have any children again. Anyway, they sign a form, they was able to read it, they don't understand it, and no one explained to them what will the consequence, because they are agree to be sterilized forever. if we look at it, even for vaccination, no one wants to have a needle in their muscles, especially the kids. Yes, this is just a picture talking people in your country actually refuse to get vaccination. As I said, I am a prof at McGill, extremely happy to be here. I am working on vaccine because I'm a vaccine believer, but how we can convince other people, especially from Africa, sub-Saharan, to accept this vaccination. As I said before, most of them were taking this vaccine. But what changed after the COVID? There was a great vaccine, the RNA vaccine. Absolutely, yes. You mentioned it, Paul. I'm just going to point it out, the lack of vaccine production, lack of facility in African countries. Most of our vaccines are produced from the Western countries and use it in low, mid-income countries. And of course, there is a lot of rumor that if you take the vaccine, there is a lot of consequence, there's a lot of side effect, even worse, especially I'm going to give the example for HPV, for example. If you look this map quickly, we can always open the floor after for discussion. I'm just going to point it out for the Africa. This is during the COVID. I can tell you, none of my family siblings in Senegal receive a COVID vaccine. They don't have access. Look at the number. That can tell you in Africa. Maybe that was the tips of the iceberg. If you look at this in Malawi, that's why I show you that map. This is still in Eastern Africa. And I think what this paper is saying, after analyzing all the data, and there is ongoing malaria vaccine also right now in Africa, but the strategy to develop and address the vaccine hesitancy must be multi-component and wide-ranging. If you look this, the hesitancy, lack of confidence, because people do not trust immunization because of story they fear. They require resources, decrease motivation, uptake. Yeah, some people say they use our resources, and the other problem is transportation. I'm going to show you at the end. Low literacy level and caregiver. Some people, they give them the pamphlet, but they cannot read it. So this is, again, lack of communication. More importantly, the gender role in vaccination decision-making, because most of the people in most developing countries, the husband take the decision if the kids have to be vaccinated or not. In this particular case, what's happened, the parents, generally, especially fathers, are reluctant to let their doctor to receive the HPV vaccine, because there is no little support data argument about this vaccine in their area, because they don't get any information and they are not convinced why the vaccine of HPV target especially the girls, not the men. The other issue also, the information they spread, because this vaccine can reduce the libido of girls when they become sexually active and make them become repetitively infertile. So, and there is some religious belief also, the vaccine, especially this one, can promote promiscuity and expose young girls to sex and abortion. I think, as Mariloue mentioned at the beginning, and Paul mentioned it, of course, vaccine always save lives. RNA vaccine, which is a new tool, and everyone experiences it because I have them. During COVID, it does work. But how we can get people, especially for people living in a real low-setting areas. This is just exactly my village. How you can get these people and convince them. It's not people living in the city. We always target cities, capital, but there is more people living in a low-setting areas. We have to think about them. And just showing them. This is my mom pictures, just showing where when I visit them, how it's like, the setting. We really need absolutely to work together to make sure some vaccine, the technology can be transferred. And also you mention it, Paul, we should also think about developing RNA vaccine for people really experiencing some disease endemic to the area, affecting them and killing them, not only focusing on what's really affecting Western countries. I just would like to thank also McGill for supporting this webinar. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop here and give it to Loydie, and we can discuss later. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much for those presentations. I think everybody has set the stage really well. I am Loydie Jerome-Majewska. I cannot see my screen. Sorry, I will try again. Can you see my presentation? Am I sharing? Don't know. No, I don't think I am. Okay, let me try again. Okay, I hope that you are now seeing my screen.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Are you seeing the presentation
okay.
at all?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so thank you for the invitation, Mariloue. Thank you for those wonderful presentations, Paul and Momar. I am, as I said, a Black woman. I appear Black with curly locks, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am very excited to be here. And so I was asked to talk about the importance of Black people in pediatric research. I am a professor in the Department of Pediatrics. I do research. And I'd just like to start by saying that as a parent myself, that every parent would like the best care for their children, whether or not they appear Black or white or any other features that people would like to define them as. And so just to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing, race is a social concept. It is not biologically relevant, and yet it drives many of the decisions that are taken by people based on outward appearances. And so these images are just children that are either siblings, as is the case for these two sisters and these two brothers, or children of parents who do not match physically what one would expect their parents to look like. And yet decisions about their care may be approached based on their color. And again, just so that we know we're talking about the same thing, Black people tend to be specifically targeted because of the long history of chattel slavery, which we are still living with the consequences of today, as Mariloue talked about at the top of this webinar. So why do we need Black people in pediatrics? In 2020, there was work published that discussed the fact that Black babies tend to do better and survive when they were cared for by Black physicians. And so what this is showing is mortality. And so this is a Black patient with a Black physician. You can see that the mortality rate gets significantly better when you have this matching pair versus when you have a Black patient with a white physician. And this actually spurred a lot of changes in how we approached medical education. And this work tried to really take a lot of things into account. About 65 different confounding factors were considered to reach this decision. And then So then the question became, is it that these white physicians were not really approaching the care of the Black babies in the way that they should? And so that's why with the social attending that one needs to really understand what was going on. Well, thankfully, and this is good news, more recently, a reanalysis of this data showed that actually the race of the physician did not really matter so much. What seemed to really matter was the fact that there were a lot of Black babies that were born with very low birth weight. And more specifically, when you looked at this data, so this is the chart showing that there were more babies that were Black with very low birth weight. Most of these were cared for by white physicians. And so this work was really heralded. It was done by these economists. And so, the title was Harvard Scholar Refutes Claim Black Babies Get Better Care from Black Doctors. And I don't think this work says that. It doesn't say that they don't get better care from Black doctors. But I think this work reveals a problem, because this to everybody meant that there was no problem. But as a Black person and as a Black researcher, to me, the question was, why are there so many low birth weight babies that are being cared for by white doctors? Is there something driving this? And this brings me to the point about why we need to include Black people in all aspects of pediatric research. We need to really ask the questions that are important to the community, and that can happen if we have members of the community driving the research. It's also important to keep in mind that there's a lot of genomic research going on. We're moving towards more precision medicine, and yet people of African ancestry are not really represented in these type of studies, which Paul discussed very early on at the top of this webinar. And so we need to include people of African ancestry in these databases, in these genomic research. But more importantly, we need to also have researchers that are Black or people of African ancestry participating in these research for the same reason that I mentioned above, which is so that we can understand the questions that are important to the Black community. And this is something that Momar touched on, which is when we generate medicine and we approach diseases, are we targeting the diseases that is important for the right population? And important for all Canadians and all babies, we need to understand the full extent of allelic heterogeneity that exists in our genome if we are ever going to really have precision medicine. And so again, I would say that we need researchers that are Black, as well as participants that are Black, in order to really understand the diseases that impact children and contribute to low birth weight. Well, there is good news, at least here in Canada today. There are opportunities. Black people make up 4.3% of the Canadian population and is the largest racialized group. Furthermore, we have a very large group of highly educated people here in Canada that are ready to lead as researchers, that are able to understand the material and are willing to be engaged with the research community. And so this chart here is from Statistic Canada, and it's just showing you that if you look at the Black population and you look at different groups of Black population, both African origin, Caribbean origin, third generation, and so on, these are way more educated people when compared to the non-racialized population of similar generation time. So they are here, they are able, they are willing. And in addition to that, more recently, me and a number of colleagues, we've established the Canadian Black Scientists Network. And this network of Black scientists is busy supporting many young, talented postdoc, graduate students, researchers that are really invested in seeing Canadian research move forward, and also making sure that there's inclusion of Black people in research in general. And so I advise all of you to take a look at our website and to reach out and talk to members of the CBSN. There is a node here in Montreal. And so I'd like to end by saying that you've heard a lot about the realities of why there's mistrust and there's a lack of Black people participating in these research. And you've heard a lot about why this would be detrimental. And I hope that at the end of this, what you've heard is that we do have an opportunity right now in this moment to include Black people and to change the course. And I hope at the end of this webinar, many of you reach out and consider how to do this. So thank you, Mariloue, for the invitation, and thank you to my co-panelists.
Thank you so much for these great presentations. Honestly, I'm so happy that we were able to share all this information that we don't usually have the space to talk about. So thank you so much, Loydie, Momar, Paul. I will now open up to the question period. I see that there's already a question in the chat. So I will read it. I'm happy to hear that Canada is dedicating hundreds of millions to, sorry, my chat has a bit of issues. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to read it again. There was something blocking the chat for me. So I'm happy to hear that Canada is dedicating hundreds of millions to fund activities related to research concerning Black people. However, one question has been on my mind, a question I often ask and would like to bring up in the context of this webinar. It seems that for all our initiatives, we are all financially dependent on people who are part of those who have been the oppressors of Black people, and who in some way continue to be so. Can we break free from this economic dependency that forces us to submit since the one who finances commands? So this was a big question. I don't know if any one of you want to jump in. Momar?
I can say a little. As it was already said by Loydie Michaud. Loydie, merci pour demander cette question. En tout cas, c'est une question qui est très poignante, qu'on peut dire. But I think if you see, there is a EU, okay, and now you're talking about United States. In Canada, it's a big country, how you see it, but they're united also. Unfortunately, in Africa, as I show you in the map, was spread east, west, and north, and whatever. And also they divide up also between each silo. I think until we're not united, also make a force and work tightly together. Gaddafi was trying to do that. Unfortunately, I don't want to bring anything politics here, but it was killed. To push toward, because we have a lot of resources in the land of Africa. Most of our components from the iPhone, whatever we're using, most of them are from there. So I think people have to think about it, but this is really more toward the African nations, our politicians, to see how they can talk together, have a pool, and promote, bring people. We are all, as you say, there's a lot of Black scientists, not only people living in Canada, US, and everywhere in the world. I'm sure if they call them, they'll be very happy to go and help. Thanks.
I would say here in this context, as far as who pays, I think, Momar, thank you for that, by the way. I think the African nations, if they were to get together as a group, would be a force. And I bet there are many other nations that would not want something like that to happen, because that would be, well, anyways, we don't want to do politics. But here, in the context of Canada and the US, I personally believe that they should pay to address the wrongs that have been done. It's a historical addition. I mean, like there's actually been costs calculated as to how much has been lost to the Black population because of slavery, and then the rules that prevented full participation, and then the rules that are still blocking the ability of people to have equal earning potentials. And so I personally don't have any problem taking that money.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Loydie and Momar. I also think that institutional commitment and support for research, including Black research, should actually be a routine practice. And it goes beyond only funding, because like when you're thinking about institutional support, you're also thinking about the policies that govern or mandate racial equities. Then you're also thinking about mandatory training, anti-bias trainings for genomic research, and also the boards. And then you're also thinking about how the institutional like governments also require and also they hold research institutions accountable for diversity and equity metrics that also help to promote research, and also hiring and of Black researchers and also participants. So it's broader than only funding. It's really like leveraging the institutional power and the support to advance anti-Black racism.
Thank you for that very big question. Like Momar was saying, c'est une question poignante, but it was good to address it, and thank you for all these perspectives. We have 2 questions in the Q&A. So Maureen says, thank you for these presentations and excellent insights. I missed a reference from Dr. Ndao presentation where it showed the percentage of studies done on patients of European, African, etc. It was a great figure, and when I search on Google, none of that is coming up. And that was quite visually descriptive. It would be great to show reference like that in the future. So I'm guessing it was more of a comment. Maureen, I don't know if you want to. Yeah.
The reference was in the previous slides. You know, I always put the particle, the group of people, we publish it, and I show the figures. Maybe she missed that part.
Oh,
but
okay.
usually I can't give anything without the reference.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I can put it in the chat also, the reference.
Thank you. But it was a good visual, of course. Ayana Jensen says, what about the ethics of medical research? We have heard a lot about historical instances, syphilis testing, curtilage, where Black people have been subjected to medical research without informed consent or proper compensation. How do you balance those concerns?
Yeah, so I think it's extremely important to put in like stronger policies on data privacy, genomic equity, and responsible data use. And also, we need to ensure that informed consent process includes clear explanations of genetic privacy and the potential benefits for this research, especially for the Black communities. And also, another important aspect of the ethics, like the medical ethics, will be creating feedback loops, whereby participants receive updates on research findings and also potential health benefits. So this is going to like help and encourage people to participate more, and also relating to the research and how it supports the community.
Yeah. So there's a lot of studies actually coming out of the genomic research that's taking place in Africa, where this is something that is being studied and has been discussed. And there are guidelines that have been published where people from the continent have suggested exactly what Paul mentioned. So one of them being that people who are participating in this research should get to decide how this data is being used, right? And that they get to have downstream, not just an open consent form where you just give, but you have a broad consent forum where you get to discuss and get a communication with the community about how their data is going to be used. Because as much as there's positive things that happen with genomic data, there are groups of people who will use this data to prove whatever theory that they think they would like to support. So for example, for every study that's showing how these variants can help understand diseases, there are people who are doing research to show that these variants may mean that Black people are not as intelligent. So we have to be very careful with how we engage with our community and what we promise them. And so I think that means that there has to be very clear rules about how this genomic data will be used in the future.
Those are so amazing responses. And I think at D2R, we're talking a lot around EDI, how we want to build community engagement skills in the research. So these are clear examples of things that we can do, right, to do the work with the community. And I'm thinking also, Momar, in your presentation, you were saying, well, some people receive pamphlets and they don't know how to read them. So I think it's innovating also how we communicate, sometimes in writing, but sometimes it needs to be other ways. I'm seeing that we only have 1 minute left before 1 p.m. So I'm seeing that the time is running. I just want to say thank you so much to the panelists. I see other questions in the chat. I will say something very quickly about each. So Marcia, you mentioned what are we planning to do around Black people in Canada with the D2R initiative. I am inviting you to look at our website. In April, we will publish our EDI action plan on our website, which will include actions for different equity deserving groups, including Black people. Anita Brown-Johnson, she's a wonderful professor. If you don't know about her, look her up on Google. She says, thank you for your insightful presentations. I have 2 questions. Will there be a recording of the presentation accessible? So yes, there will be a recording. And I'm ending so quickly, but I would like to talk to everyone for the whole day, but it's all the time that we have together. I'm so grateful for your presentations, Loydie, Paul, and Momar, for the generosity of your time and the quality of your presentation. So thank you so much. And thank you to all the participants that were present. If you want to continue the conversation with me around EDI, my email is mariloue.daudier@mcgill.ca. If you're not on our newsletters yet, please sign up and also sign up to our LinkedIn page. Thank you so much. And I don't know if you want to say last word.
On the behalf of our panelists, I just want to thank you so much for organizing this. Also, thank you to McGill for supporting the D2R. I think you did a great job, and thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mariloue. This has been really fun. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for being engaged and caring to attend.
Thanks to everyone.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.